Okay, welcome to Faith and Calm, class number 164. We are about to start the 9 days. So it's want to drop that light back there?
I'm going to do it.
It's I find it an inspiring time. I mean, obviously there's a lot of darkness. Tisha B'Av has gone away, but I think you learn how to turn things around and turn the darkness into light. So and that's very powerful, and that's very inspiring, and that's very of course, the Lubavitcher Rebbe emphasized that the phrase is "Nichnas Adar Marbim Besimcha and Nichnas Av Ma'atim Besimcha." When you go into Adar, which is the month of Purim, you're supposed to increase in joy. And literally, when you go into Av, you ma'atim besimcha, you decrease in joy. But the Rebbe said, the Chassid, you're always joyful. You're always with Hashem. How can you, what do you mean, less joy? It means you ma'atim, you decrease in matters of things that are extraneous, but you do it with joy. You do it with joy.
When you just,
ma'atim.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
When you
decrease.
How do you reduce the 3 weeks? How do you reduce the time of pain and suffering?
Through joy.
You reduce it through joy.
Through joy. So
reduce the bad stuff.
Just the bad stuff. So there's a story. It's really central to this time, and that is we read it in the parsha a week ago or so ago, and the story goes that. It was Tisha B'Av. What was the very first Tisha B'Av? So people who know, the very first Tisha B'Av was when the spies came back with a report from traveling in the land of Israel, and they explained to the Jews, and they said, "We cannot. It's going to be disaster. We're all going to die. You're going to die. We're going to die. Everyone's going to die. There's giants there. It's impossible." And even God couldn't possibly overcome the situation there. Another story for another time, what they mean by but that God couldn't do it. Anyway, so when all the Jews fell into weeping and mourning and crying, and the Gemara in Tanis says that they wept the entire night long. God told them, he says, "Listen, you're weeping in vain. Because you are weeping in vain today, therefore I am going to give you a holiday over this day, and you are going to weep for good reasons from the future. You weep in vain today, you're going to have reasons to really cry about Tisha B'Av in the future." And so it became a day of calamities for the Jewish people. As we know, the first temple was destroyed on Tisha B'Av. The second temple was destroyed on Tisha B'Av. This was the day that the city of Beitar was destroyed. This is the day that the temple was plowed over. This is the day that Tisha B'Av is the day where the Warsaw Ghetto fell. The Tisha B'Av is the day of the start of World War I. It was a day set out for the calamities by God. Now, I want to replay back that statement that we just heard from the Gemara in Tanis. It says, "Because you were crying for no reason, therefore, God says, I'm going to give you good reason to cry on this day." Now, imagine somebody comes to you, a husband, a wife, a father, mother, and he says to you, "You're crying for no reason. You shouldn't be crying. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give you a really good reason to cry. You're crying for nothing." Now, how would you respond? What would you think? How would you respond to that statement? Somebody said that. Okay, nobody's answering. So I was listening to a class, and the women were
I'll
there.
tell you something. If you want to know the honest truth, that's what my mother used to say when we were kids. She must have picked it up along the way, from relatives, because she used to say that. "You're crying now? I'll really give you something to cry about." So, right. What would I think?
Those
Right.
anger, rage, disappointment, sadness, a lot of emotions come into the situation, right?
Right.
Some women
Right.
said revenge. Okay, so Rabbi YY said, yeah, that's a nice benign feeling, but but it's real. But really, we really should, we should examine these statements and try and understand what in the world is the Gemara trying to tell you, you know? And he hammers the example home. He says, imagine, you're the head counselor on a bus. And the kids are crying because, somebody packed peanut butter sandwiches and everybody hates peanut butter sandwiches. And the whole bus is weeping and crying and so forth. So the counselor says, you know what? You're crying for no good reason. I'm going to give you a good reason to cry. No food, no lunch for the next 3 days. And you're going to be on this bus for the next 10 hours, and so forth. And no air conditioning either. I mean, you don't really have something to cry. I mean, that kind of counselor's got to go, It's really bad. So what is this business? What is God saying to the Jewish people? You cried for no reason, and therefore you have to, and especially when you think about it, that generation of Jews didn't have a good reason. It's true, they didn't have a good reason to cry, because if any generation actually knew what was going on in the situation, they wouldn't have had any problem. Remember, just a few months ago, they were in Egypt. They saw the 10 plagues. They saw the Kriyas Yamsuf. They received the Torah at Har Sinai. These people, we are thousands of years removed from it, but they knew what was going on every single day. If you asked them, hey, where'd you get your breakfast today? Oh, it's mud. It fell from the sky. Where'd you drink from? Oh, you got, water comes from this well of Miriam every day. So, they lived miracles. So why they don't believe? Why are they fearful of the fact of going into the land of Israel? And the answer is that fear is a feeling and an emotion that is not necessarily rational. You can't argue with somebody who's really anxiety and has troubles and is worried and is anxious and is feeling all sorts of fear. You can't do it.
They've heard bad things about Israel. So
yeah, but they saw so many things that could possibly. Why in the world, if anybody would have no faith, belief in God to be able to do a miracle? They just saw all these things.
It's true. Yeah.
But the spies managed to convince them that, all those things happen. And in the end, it's all going well, but it's going to turn out bad in the end anyway. And you know what? We have a weak spot for that. It's going so well. Everything else is happening. But, there's one thing, but it's going to destroy the whole situation. I wasn't supposed to get all those good things anyway in the meantime, and therefore this is going to be really bad, and we're going to all be wiped out. And there's nothing you can argue with a person. You can't talk a person out of this. When somebody's feeling like, like in panic attack mode, there's not much you can say, because emotions are emotions and they're real. And you can't necessarily rationally pull yourself out of it. Okay, so with that as an introduction then, now we're going to have to understand what was God saying to them. Because you cried for no reason, therefore you're going to get it really good. So it sounds like he's giving you a punishment. The answer is, of course, no, he's not. He's not giving a punishment. He's telling out the Jews an important lesson in life about consequences. Crying for no reason and anxiety and fear is a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's the law of attraction. The more you feel like you can't, you can't. This was one pundit once said, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're correct. In other words, if you think you can't, you're correct. And then if you think you can, you're correct. Once your mind has a tremendous power over the shape of reality. Now that sounds like pop psychology, but it actually is physics. Physicists know today that the observer really affects what the situation of reality is. Physicists will explain to you that when you look at the electrons, and before you look at it, they can be going clockwise in one way and counterclockwise at the other way, and they can exist at the same time. They can be a light and it can be a wave at the same time. And by us thinking about it, observing it a particular way, that is actually what causes it to reality to crystallize in one way or another. So our minds are very powerful. The more we think of it, this is the end and this is the disaster. Guess what? It is the disaster God is telling you. You were going to cause a disaster for yourself because you are part of me and you actually affect what reality is going to turn out. When you think that you're not going to get any better, that this is not happening, and this is not happening, and this is going to keep going on, and you're worried about this, can actually cause the actual thing that you're not happy about. All right. Well, that's nice theory, but what do you do in order to change that mindset? Because fear is real, and when you're in it, it's not. You can't talk yourself easily out of it, and or block it or numb it. I mean, many people, they just numb it. They just pretend like, everything's going on well, and they live on a superficial level, and life is life. And, but so many people are sensitive souls. They have big souls. They have powerful souls, and they're not able to necessarily just turn off their emotions like a hose, So when you're feeling these feelings and so forth, they're real. So you can't just, some people may be able to just, just go through life on a superficial level, but it's not life. It's not living. They just numb themselves, or they take drugs, or they do other kinds of stuff and so forth like that. So what is the core? What is really the problem? What made the Jews so susceptible to the situation? So we're going into a period called the 9 days. Now, 9 is an interesting number. It says that there are 10 powers of the soul. Chesed, the Gvura, Tiferes, these different kindness, the severity, there's the bonding, there's the emotional connection and so forth, there's intellectual powers and so forth. The 10th power of the soul is called Malchus, which means basically kingship, literally means kingship, and conceptually it means in an inner dignity and a sense of inner self-worth. This is one of the biggest challenges we have in this generation. We all have this problem. We all have some difficulties to be able to connect to this level. The fact of the matter is, do we really believe that we matter and that we are important and that our lives make a difference, and everything, what you do has infinite value? It's easy to say, but it's harder to actually experience, because most of the world tells us you're just another consumer in the big market, and you're just another indispensable piece in the universe, and you're not, an indispensable piece. And when you're here today and gone tomorrow, you may as well just have some fun. And spend some money on my products. That's basically a lot of what the advertising community says. And the only that's really all there is out there. And it's just a big emptiness and a big void. That message is all around us. We all hear that. And we all sort of internalize the fact that, we've done that, nothing's really going to happen here. I was reading an article in a magazine in English, the Russian English magazine. My wife used to put it together for the Shalom House. And there was an article in there on the English section by a man named Jay Litvin. Jay Litvin was about Tshuva. I believe he was in Delaware, Vogel's Chabad house. Maybe I've never met him. Anyway, he moved to Israel. He was involved with Children of Chernobyl. He became, he got very involved with Chabad and Judaism. And he became a fantastic writer, too. I guess he was a writer beforehand. And unfortunately, at a very young age, he developed a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And after 4 years of a lot of treatments and sickness and everything else, he passed away. But during those 4 years, he wrote these fantastic little articles, and they're still publishing them because they're very, very poetic and very inspiring. So one piece that he was saying there was, we all have moments in our lives where we rise above the mundane, petty things in this world, the simple little worries, and we discover our true self, our true being, and we see everything from a higher level. And those are fleeting moments, and you can't force them to come. But once you've been in there, and once you've been in that space, and you've been looking at your life from a bigger, higher, more profound perspective, you sort of wish, can I get back to that situation? Can I turn the clock back? Can I get out of what I am right now? Because being there in this higher situation and seeing how important and precious moments of life is, and how and what you can possibly do to help other people, the things that you can say to other people, the nice things that you can do to other people, you want to go back to that situation. Now, this is not to make a person feel regretful, because we all waste those times because we're busy with other things, and then something comes up and we miss out on it. And we always also have to tell ourselves, tomorrow I can push things off and I'll be able to get there. And, And that's both of them are a problem. One is regretting the past, and the other one is pushing things off into the future because you may never get there. So you really only have now, he says. You only have now, and wherever situation that you're in, now is where life is. We have troubles and we have concerns, but those are part of life. And working them with the present, being in the present now with them and so forth, we can start making a change in them. So it's about living in now, in the present, and realizing, do you know what you are? You're a piece of godliness. You are a piece of, God never gets depressed. He never gets sad. He never gets anxious. And that is your true being. That's your true self. But we get these messages when we're little about, like I said at the beginning, it's like that discount you and saying you're a nothing and you deserve to be punished, and you're not good, and you're lazy, and you're weak, and you're this and you're that. And those messages really stick around from childhood, and we internalize them, and we stop thinking about who we really are. There's a story about Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. One time he did a lot of operas and concertos and so forth for the emperor. What's his name? I forget his name. Anyway, the Austrian emperor, and he was his patron. Anyway, the Austrian emperor liked to pay musicians, but he didn't have much of an ear for music. In fact, he was sort of tone deaf. So in the middle of one of these, like the magic flute or whatever, when he first composed it and he played it, the emperor fell asleep. And when he woke up at the end, he said, Wolfgang Amadeus, that was amazing, but too many notes. He fell asleep, as he said, too many notes. So Mozart replied back to him and said, what could you say? I mean, if you tell him, like you don't know anything about music, you're tone deaf, and you have no business criticizing my music because I know a lot more than you, he would have ended up a head shorter. So instead, what he told him was something very interesting. He said, Emperor, okay, say you're right. Which notes should I cut? Which notes are the right ones to move? Because a person who is a true maestro knows every single note plays an important part in the orchestra. Why am I telling you that story? Because each one of us is truly capable of adding a few notes to God's divine orchestra. And each one of us knows deep inside that we have something unique that nobody else can replace. It may not be in everything, but there is some area, there is some aspect of human life where you have a unique role and a unique ability, and nobody else can do that. And God is sitting there, and he's sort of like waiting for you. You're like the guy with the cymbals at the end of the concert. And he's waiting for us to be able to do that unique thing.
Alexa, do you have a notification for me?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's so we have, each one of us have that unique role to play, but we forget about that, and that is a special role that only we can play. That's your inner malchus, that's your inner dignity, that's your majesty, that's where you're a king, that's where you're a queen. We don't necessarily have a role like overall people, but there is every single person in God's world. You have a unique niche, and he's waiting for you to fill out that particular niche. There's nothing more important because everybody else is depending on you. Everybody wants to hear. If you don't come there with the cymbals at the end, it's not going to be it's not going to be rousing like it's supposed to be. So every one of us has that, and so forth. And that is what we're trying to discover here in this period of time, before Tisha B'Av, during this period of time. Yeah, we all have this sort of sense like it's hopeless. There's a lot of news out there, and it's going to reinforce that message. But the truth of the matter is that we are not. We are capable of tremendous things. There are tremendous miracles that have happened to the Jews in the past, and they continue to in the future. And each one of us has a particular role. But if we don't think that we have some value, and we think like we can be destroyed, just like the Jews at the time going into Israel, and they felt like, we're expendable and we can be destroyed. Yeah, that's going to be the end, because it'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So here we are. It's a very special time. The time where you can actually start thinking about yourself as somebody who's special and is capable of doing a lot. And this is our mission at this particular time of the year, is to try and rediscover our own inner dignity and own inner worth. And with that, I will turn the microphone over to my wife. I'm going to speak more, but we'll continue next week. Okay. Thank you.
Yes,
I liked very much the story that you told about Mozart. I mean,
yeah.
and the what's it called? And every note is important.
Yes.
I was thinking he fell asleep because maybe the music was so beautiful it relaxed him. But it was a very nice example that you brought. So
Yeah.
thank
Yeah. He's yeah. You know, it's like, what the Rebbe says about your birthday too. Your birthday is the day that, where God said, I need you in this world and you're an indispensable piece. So, we have to go back to that original birthday and say, yeah, we're here for a purpose. It's not an accident that we're here, and not an accident anything that's happening in our lives. Okay, with that, I will turn it over and I my better half.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. Pleasure to see everybody. Does anybody want to say anything before I begin?
It was a really hot day where we live.
Oh,
How about you?
it's been an incredible summer. I don't know why nobody else talks about it. It's the most humid summer. I don't even remember Boston being humid, but it's incredible. I want to say, did Yeskel Shimon say already that this class is dedicated for a refuah shlema, a speedy healing for Reza Chaya Bas Leah? That's Emily's mother. She's in the hospital. So yeah, pretty serious, I guess. So Reza Chaya Bas Leah should have a complete refuah. She should have a complete healing.
Amen. I just want to say good evening, and this is Golda. Not every time I have a chance to hear you.
Oh, good. Very nice. Very happy to have you. Thank you for coming on.
And for Yeheskel, what he talked about, I had the question, but I understand he probably doesn't have time, but maybe in the end I can ask the question.
Yes,
according
please.
to what he explained.
Yes, please. We're actually speaking, we're actually speaking on similar topics. But so anyway, before I would like to begin with the four things that I always say. Number one, we're in an extraordinary time. And what do I mean by that? I mean that the Lubavitch Rebbe told us in 1991, 1992, that especially 1992, that we're crossing the threshold into the Geula, into the redemption of the Jews and the entire world. And as I always say, and in past classes, if you listen to them, you'll hear that the Rebbe made many, many, many astounding public predictions, and people said, nah, that can't happen, and they all happened. So this too is something we can rely on. So secondly, our souls were handpicked to be in this era because we have a particular mission to fulfill, each one of us. Next, we have everything we need in order to do our job. We have the Torah, which is our guidebook, and we have the mitzvahs, which are our power tools. And I have to say, I'm incredibly grateful for the direction of the Rebbe. I learned the Rebbe's sichas 5 or 6 days a week. The Rebbe's talks, and it is, they've definitely changed my life. The last thing is that what we're doing tonight actively advances the redemption. The Rebbe said so. He said the fastest way to speed up the redemption is by learning about it. So anyway, I want to say a little detail. I wasn't going to speak about this, but I'm going to say a little detail because it's not so well known, and I think it's important. And that is that the time we are in is not set in stone, a bad time. When the sages set the fasts of the 17th of Tammuz, all the fasts of the year, except for Yom Kippur, which comes from the Torah. The rest were enacted by the sages. But when the sages set them up, they set them up as days with two faces. Each of these these times of calamity is really designed from the beginning to be a day with two faces. When the Jewish people are undergoing persecution and when there's no peace for the Jews, then they are days of fasting and calamity, or they're days of fasting and sadness. But when there are no decrees from the nations and there is peace for the Jewish people, or there's peace, I think it's peace for the Jewish people. I have to look that up. Whether it's peace for the Jewish people or for the entire world, it must be just for the Jewish people, I believe, whatever. Then they are transformed into days of sasan v'simcha, joy and gladness. And as we know, maybe not everybody knows, so it bears repeating. These 3 weeks, the days of these 3 weeks are going to be the most spectacular days that ever were in the redemption. It's going to be, and it's becoming that way now. The Rebbe says there's a hierarchy. And once we are fully in the redemption, there's a hierarchy. The holidays that we have now will still exist, but we'll barely notice them because the light of the redemption is going to be so great. Higher than the holidays, higher than Pesach, Shavuos, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, higher than them will be Purim. Purim's not, light will never dim. Purim is a very different holiday. Higher than that is the plain days of Yemos HaMashiach, of the days of Mashiach. They're going to be so bright, it's unbelievable. And still higher than that are going to be the fast days. Still higher than the days of, there's going to be nothing higher. So, and the Rebbe says we can taste that even now. We can taste that in the 3 weeks even now. And the Rebbe says in particular, you can taste it on the Shabbos of each of these, of the 3 weeks, the 3 Shabbosim, the 3 Shabboses of the 3 weeks. You can taste what it's going to be like in the future. So anyway, so I want to read just a couple paragraphs from an essay, and there's a trick to it, not a trick to it. There's an interesting point to it. So I want you to listen very carefully. It's written by a woman. She's a blogger, and this is how it goes. It starts out about Elul, but it's really about Tisha B'Av. She says, it's Elul, and I love Elul a lot. But this year, I feel like my record player is stuck on Tisha B'Av, and it won't move on to the next song called Elul. I'm an optimist. I easily see beauty around me. A pristine blue sky overtaken by thunderheads, a spontaneous hug, and she lists a lot of other things. But instead of going out into the beauty of the field this Elul to meet my king, I feel like staying inside with the door locked and the curtains drawn. My record seems stuck on the recurring thought that despite all the perceived beauty, it's so lacking. I feel hit over the head with the reality that the true essence of each moment is missing and the beauty I see in the world is fool's gold. It may shine, but it's not real. And it's not real because the building blocks of reality were broken. They crumbled the day the temple fell. And so it seems we have been trying to build all the moments of our lives with dust instead of with solid stones. The sages teach that all of life was diminished by the fall of the temple. The fall which was preceded by the departure of the divine presence. After the divine presence left the temple was a mere shell, as was everything on earth. It's no wonder that the temple fell after the very presence that holds the universe together left. And it's no wonder that the world in its entirety has been falling ever since. I think the sky is beautiful, but it's not as blue as it once was. I think the love between me and my children and me and my husband is precious, but it's only mere sparks compared to the original flame that once burned when the divine presence was here. Do you ever wonder what it will be like when we as mere mortals are privy to experience what love originally felt like? Or do you ever wonder what blue really looks like? We've lived for so long in a diminished state, we've forgotten we were made for so much more. Now, the kicker is this was not written by a Jew. This was written by a non-Jew. about our temple. Is that incredible? Anyway, her name is, I wrote it down. I forgot what her name is now. It'll come to me, God willing.
But
So
she's from our modern times. She must be like a devout
She's not-
Catholic.
no, she's not. She
So how does she
believes,
know about the
she's
temple?
waiting because she takes classes with rabbis, and she's waiting for the return of the Jewish temple because
Oh, so she's
because-
one of the a Noahide follows.
she's probably a Noahide. Yeah, but
Right.
is that intense beauty
Wow.
from a Noahide? Is that
Wow.
intense appreciation of what the temple is from a Noahide? It's
Wow, it sounds like from
incredible.
a Jew.
Yeah, it's incredible. Halavai that we should feel that way, you know? Halavai that we should feel that keenly. Anyway, halavai means it should only be. So anyway, how can we so I want to so the title of this class was how to fix the temple within, how to repair the temple, how to rebuild the temple within us. So I want to say right now in the class that I'm taking, we're still on we're still on Parshas Pinchas. We haven't finished the talk from Parshas Pinchas. It happens to be one of my favorite talks of the whole year because it's so practical, and you know, in the Parsha of Pinchas, there's a wacky thing that takes place in the Parsha of Pinchas. The Jews are poised to enter the land of Israel, but Hashem wants them. Pardon?
What do you
Hashem
mean
poised.
They
They're
were
about to enter. They're about to enter the land. You know, it's towards the end of Moshe's life. You know, and they're going to cross over into Israel. Hashem's going to take Moshe's neshama. You know, before. He's never going to go into Israel. You know, at that point, he doesn't go into Israel. Hashem takes his neshama, and then Yehoshua is going to lead the Jews into Israel. And but Moshe gets the privilege of. Wait a minute, was Moshe? Yeah, of course, Moshe was still there. So so they're going to divide up the land. And how do they divide up the land? They do a lottery, and and the lottery is totally otherworldly. Of the 12 tribes, the leader of each tribe comes up to the lottery. He picks out 2 lots from the lottery, like this. And one of them has his name, the name of his tribe on it, and the other one has the name of the property that his tribe will get. And each Nasi, each prince, pulled out exactly the right one. He pulled out his name and he pulled out the parcel of land that goes with him. Also, Elazar, at this point, Aaron HaKohen is no longer alive. Aaron, the head Kohen, is not alive. And his son has taken over, Elazar. And Elazar is wearing, you know, the breastplate that lit up with answers from Hashem. And the breastplate, as each Nasi comes up, the breastplate lights up with the answer of what piece of property his tribe is going to get. And Elazar HaKohen prophesizes it before the guy picks out his lot. So, but then there's one more totally bizarre thing, and that is that the lot itself, the pieces of paper, spoke. When the Nasi would draw the paper out of the box, the paper would say, "I belong to the tribe of Reuven, and I get this and this property." So Rebbe asks a great question. Why did the lot have to speak? I mean, Hashem doesn't do miracles for nothing. In fact, Hashem doesn't like to do miracles. He likes things to operate seemingly by nature. So you could say, okay, maybe he did this miracle. Maybe Hashem did this miracle because he wanted the Jews to relax and know when they go to the land, this is my section. I don't have to be jealous of that or that or that because this was handpicked for me from Hashem. But as the Rebbe answers, they would know that anyway, that Urim Batumim, lit up. Elazar HaKohen said it with divine prophecy. He said it before the guy picked the lot. He said which lot he's going to pick. Anyway, so and the Rebbe says, you know, it's just the lottery was just like a side detail. It was one it was a means to, the goal is to divide the land. It's just like a means to an end. Why is it so important that it has to speak? And he quotes the Rogachover Gaon, who is the person who gave the Rebbe his rabbinic ordination. And the Rogachover Gaon says that in holiness, everything, even if it's only a step in the process, is directed by Hashem, and it has a holy status. And the Rebbe brings that down as a message for us that, you know, we're so focused on the end goal. And the Rebbe says, no, as a Jew, you have to know that every step along the way is intensely interesting to Hashem and is a goal in itself. The lottery, so even though the lottery seemed like such a, just there were many other things that were going on. No, Hashem was intensely interested in it, and therefore it had to be done with thought, speech, and deed. Everything that we do, the Rebbe says, needs to be done with all three of our soul garments. Our soul expresses itself, just like our body expresses itself with thought, speech, and deed. The soul expresses itself with thought, speech, and deed. And everything we do, every action that we do in the day, we should be fully immersed in it. And the Rebbe says, not only is this good for the person, but also the completeness of the redemption depends on it. It depends on our being something that is called a panimi. A panimi is somebody who is fully immersed with whatever they are doing at that moment. And the Rebbe says to be a panimi, you have to be there completely at every single moment of your life. You can't be, you can't be running off to something and ignoring what and not being fully present where you are right now. The Rebbe is a prime example of this. When people said it was so beautiful speaking to the Rebbe, the experience of speaking to the Rebbe was so beautiful because he was 100% with you throughout your audience, 100% right there with you. Now the Rebbe had the world on his shoulders, absolutely the whole world. He got hundreds, if not thousands, of letters a day with the most horrible problems in the world, and he was making life and death decisions, not only on a daily basis, but on an extremely frequent basis. And yet, when you came to him, he was nowhere else but with you. So the Rebbe says a pnimi enters fully into every aspect of her day. And the trick to doing it is you don't think about the next thing that you're going to do. You have a plan for the day. You have a plan. But, if from 12:30 till 1:30 or till 2 o'clock, you are taking a class, you are nowhere else. Your thoughts are nowhere else. If you don't think about what's coming up next, you already have a plan. At 2 o'clock you're doing something else, but you're not there right now. You're wherever you are at the moment. And a person is, they use the word monach. A person is set aside and reserved for this particular function. And the touchstone, the proving point of where you are, the Rebbe says, is your speech. For some reasons of thought, speech, and deed. Speech is the Eben HaBochin. It's the touchstone of where you are. So very often people don't use speech. They think about something and then they carry it out. And I love this example. I use this example. This particular room is my office, at my home office, and I have so many papers in my office. I have so many financial papers that need to be ordered. I have so many school stuff, so much school stuff. It's unbelievable. And so every once in a while, I decide I'm conquering this office. I'm just going to conquer you. You're going to be totally orderly. And so since I read the Sikha, what do? I open the door to my office and I say, I have to do it with all three garments. So I make a plan, what section of the room I'm going to work on. I open the door and I say, room, get ready. you're going to be, I'm conquering you. I'm turning you over for, and I'm going to make order in this room, and get ready because it's happening. And then I go about, and then I set, and then I do it. And when you do it, your conquering is so much more complete. The Rebbe says that's true for anything you have to do in your life. If you
Can I
want,
interrupt you? What about, you're talking about being a panimi, or you just said that you were going into the room and you were conquering. So what are you specifically talking about, what the Rebbe said that you're saying now?
okay, so being a
I
panini
didn't see
is that
the,
whatever you do,
well,
you're
that part I understand. I
okay,
just don't
and you
understand what
also
you're going in your
use,
room had to
yes,
be.
and you so let's say I have a task, and my task is to clean my most often people just go from what's in their head and they set out and they do it. Whoever says it's much more powerful if you use your speech as well. So I want to conquer this room. I want to make it orderly. And so
Thank you.
and
Okay.
so I open the door. First of all, I make a plan. I decide I'm doing this section right here, and that's it. When I'm done with that, I'm not doing any more. I have time for only this. And then I tell the room, you're about to be conquered. And then I go in it, and I go in and I do it.
So using your speech, right? Using your speech helps carry it. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Now,
Sorry.
no, it's fine. I want to tell you that this is not only is it a nice way to live your life, but it is so relaxing and so healthy. I'm going to give you a true confession, not the true confession, but I told you about my office. The next true confession I'm going to tell you is that since the last 2 weeks of school, I would say that my memory has not been the same. And what happened in the last 2 weeks of school? The last 2 weeks of school, I love my school. I love where I work. I absolutely adore it. But I have to say, in the last 2 weeks, we had so many administrative tasks. It was kooky. It was absolutely kooky, all the stuff that we had to get done. And in addition to the fact that you have the most important thing is that, you're going to send these kids, these little kids, they're going out of your bailiwick. They're not going to be mine anymore. I'm sending them off into the world, and I want to pack them with everything they'll need for their journey in life. That's the most important thing. But on top of that, I have a million administrative tasks. And it was like I was thinking about I forgot all about this, and I was thinking about 10,000 things every moment, and I sort of continued in that vein after school was over. I just kept like my mind, my davening was like my benching, my saying the bracha after the meals. It was all like that. It was like I was not in one place at one time. And then I got this, and then I learned it was perfect for me. Then I learned this essay about this sikha about being a panini, and I am a different person. I'm a different person. It is, and I think it's good for
The
all.
idea, like being in the moment.
Yeah, and I have to say that I think it's good for all health problems. I really do. I also developed a health problem in the past few weeks, and I looked it up, and this health problem, which is totally a physical thing, can very easily be brought on by stress. And stress is so lowered when you become a panimi. When you focus on one thing and you make a schedule, you focus on that and nothing else. You don't think about the next moment. And so anyway, we have only so much energy. And when we put our energy into fear and worry and panic and what's going on, what's going to be next, then, we're a goner. But when we put our energy into being here now, we transform ourselves. And the Rebbe says we also transform the entire world. We even affect the upper worlds. They also get an elevation from our being here now, from our living like a panini, like an internal person, a person who's where they are at that precise moment. And the Rebbe says, as I said before, that the entire redemption is hanging on this. The entire redemption is affected by this. So anyway, I just wanted to pass on that little experience and to recommend it highly. It really, in 2 days, I see a remarkable difference in myself. even when I'm eating, I don't do a million things on, like I don't do a million, even if I'm eating alone, I don't do a million things when I'm eating anymore. I sit there and I look at the food and I say, thank you, Hashem, look at this, a vegetable, protein, carbohydrate. And I revel over what Hashem has given me. And oh, it's so nice. It's just so nice. I can't even begin to explain.
But you usually just like walk around and grab something and eat it while you're walking around?
I don't do it in a settled, no, I do, but I'm up and down and up and down, and I'm reading or I'm thinking about the next problem and making a plan. And also I was eating ridiculously fast because I was in a hurry.
Digestion, right.
Yeah. So anyway, so I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to turn off the recording, and anybody who wants can ask any question that they would like.